This is a series of videos. So this video, I'm going to talk about the Azure AZ 900 Practice Test 5. Prior to this, I have created a couple of videos. If you have missed those videos, you may want to look at those videos also. So there is no need to go in order. Any order works fine. So I have created 4 videos already on the same topic. Let's take a look at the questions on the test 5. So there will be 42 questions asked in each paper. So I will be discussing and explaining what is the correct answer, why the other options are incorrect. So let's take a look at the question number 1. This question requires that you evaluate the italicized text. So if you are reading this for the first time, you may want to understand reading these 2 paragraphs. But for the subsequent interviews, test, you don't need to read these 2 statements. So let's look at the question. You have several virtual machines in the Azure subscription. You create new subscription. The virtual machine cannot be moved to the new subscription. Is that correct statement? If that is the correct statement, then no change is needed is the answer. But this is not correct statement. So you can move the Azure virtual machines into the new subscription. So second one is the right answer. So you have to follow some checklist here before moving any of your Azure resources from one subscription into the another subscription, so that you can avoid the errors. So there are some guidelines here, moving operations for each service. So you can look at the help from these links before moving into the new subscription. Second question, your company hosts an accounting named App1 that is used by all the customers of company. App1 has low usage during the first 3 weeks and high usage during the last week of the month. So the question is talking about the elasticity. So on demand, you have to increase or decrease your application scalability. So that's related to the elasticity. The answer is elasticity. Next question, you plan to map a network drive from several computers that run Windows 10 to the Azure storage. So you need to create a storage solution in the Azure planned map drive. So a file service in the storage account is the correct answer. That Azure service will help to mount your file systems from on-premise into the Azure, and it also supports the protocol called server message block. And you can mount your file systems from Windows, Linux, and Mac operating systems. Next question, you have an on-premise network that contains several servers. You plan to migrate all the servers into the Azure. You need to recommend a solution to ensure that some of the servers are available if a single Azure data center goes offline for extended period. So this is talking about what should happen if the one data center goes offline. So it's a fault tolerance in case of something happens during the maintenance. Let's say you unplug the power from one resource and doing something in the data center. So that's the fault tolerance. Fault tolerance is the right answer here. Next question, you have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1. Subscription 1 contains the resources. So you have resource group 1, 2, 3, and you have resource group 1 in the West Europe, resource 2 in the North Europe with separate policy 1, 2, 3. And then you have a website called Web App 1, which is actually located in West Europe in the RG1. Now, you move Web App 1 to RG2. The question is, when you move the Web App 1 to RG2, does the policy will also move? So you cannot move Web App from one resource group to another resource group. So you have your Web App is actually sitting inside the App Service Plan. So App Service Plan, can that move from one resource one region to the other resource? So the answer is the app service plan for the web app 1 remains in the West Europe, but the policy 2 applied to the web app 1. So within the same region you can move, but not the different regions. So you can move an app to another app service plan as long as the source plan and the target plan are in the same resource group and the geographical location. So if it is across the geographical location, you cannot move. Which of the following statements are true? From Azure Service Health, an administrator can view the health of all the services in the Azure environment. That's correct. And also this Azure Service Health, from an Azure Service Health, an administrator can create a rule that will be alerted if the Azure service fails. That is also correct. From an Azure Service Health, the administrator can prevent service failure. So Azure Service Health cannot prevent failure. So first two answers are correct. Question number 7. When you need to delegate permissions to several Azure virtual machines simultaneously, you must deploy the virtual machines to dash to the same Azure region. No, that's not correct. Therefore, the no change is needed is not the correct answer. By using the same Azure Resource Manager template, Azure Resource Manager template will be JSON RM template will be used to automate your deployments. The question is delegating the permissions to the several Azure virtual machines simultaneously. So we are talking about having multiple virtual machines. You must deploy the virtual machines to the same resource group. Yes, that makes sense. That's the correct answer. The next question is, you have an Azure subscription that contains the policy-based virtual network gateway named GW1 and the virtual network named VNet1. You need to ensure that you can configure the point-to-site configuration connection from VNet to the on-premise. So here we were talking about the VPN gateway that is used to create the connection from on-premise to the Azure. So there are two options correct here to fulfill the requirement. That is, one is create a route-based virtual network gateway and delete the gateway virtual network gateway. Next question, Dash hosts the web apps. The app service plan hosts the web apps. So other options are unrelated. A company plans to migrate to Azure. A company has several departments. All the Azure resources used by each department will be managed by a department administrator. So you need to recommend an Azure deployment that provides the ability to segment the Azure for all the deployments. So if you want to get the billing for each department separately, you have to manage the multiple subscriptions. Each department will have own subscription. So the first one is correct, and remaining options are incorrect. Question number 11, you have a public load balancer that balances the port 80 and 440 across all three virtual machines. So you have, let's say, VM1, VM2, and VM3. You need to direct all the RDP connections to VM3 only. So when somebody is accessing VM1 or VM2, it has to be redirected into VM3. Now options have, you already have the public load balancer. So that is what you need to remember here. An inbound NAT rule, load balancing rule, new public load balancing rule for VM3, that's not required because we already have the public load balancer. So second and third is not required. A front-end IP configuration, that is part of the VM. So you need to create inbound NAT rule to fulfill this requirement. The traffic from VM1 will be redirected to VM3, or same as VM2 will be redirected to VM3 for the port 80 and 443. So these are the rules we need to create inside the inbound NAT rule. So that NAT rule basically forward the traffic from specific port of the specific front-end IP address, which is VM1 and VM2, to specific port of the specific backend IP address. So here the second one is VM3. So all these rules will be configured in the inbound NAT rule. Next question. This is a fill in the blanks question, talking about monitors the web application. So application insights will capture the website live traffic. So that's the place you can monitor the web application. So Azure Application Insights is the right answer. What are the two characteristics of the public cloud? Dedicated hardware, unsecured connections, limited storage. So those three are not correct. Secured, metered pricing. Yeah, so pay as you go, that is correct. Self-service management, you can deploy applications on your own. So last two are correct. You plan to use the Azure import and export service to copy files to Azure storage account. So which two files should you create before you prepare the drive for the import job? So for preparing the import job, you need the drive set CSV file, also the dataset CSV files. Those two are the answers. So let's take a look at the security considerations. The data on the drive encryption by using the BitLocker. Now here, for import jobs, drives are encrypted in two ways. Specify the option when using the dataset.csv, and then the next one is specify the encryption key in the driveset.csv. What is guaranteed in the SLA? Uptime is guaranteed in the SLA. Performance, feature availability, bandwidth, so those are not related. So if you look at the formula for the uptime, that's related to the SLA. Next one, your company plans to automate the deployments of the Azure, deployment of services to the Azure. Your manager is concerned that you may expose the administrator credentials during the deployment. So if you want to prevent exposing any of the credentials in the Azure, so you will be using the Azure Key Vault. Key Vault is the place, Azure service, which you can use to store your keys, certificates, and your secrets. Everything will go into the Azure Key Vault. This is a true-false question. Data that is copied to the Azure storage account is maintained automatically, at least 3 copies. That is true. So in Azure storage account, it automatically maintains the 3 copies of each file. All the data that is copied to the Azure storage account is backed up automatically to another data center. Backed up automatically, so you have to do the backup. It won't back up automatically to the other data center. An Azure storage account that contains up to terabyte of data and up to 1 million files. So there is no such limit. You can have unlimited storage space in the Azure storage account. Azure service in general availability is released to a subset of Azure customers. No, that's not true. So it is released to general availability is released to everybody. So you have a public for private preview, public preview, and general availability. As soon as general availability comes, it is available to everyone. A company can store resources in multiple subscriptions. Yes, you can create multiple subscriptions for each department or each environment, for example, dev, test, and production. So that's true. Storing 1 terabyte of the data in the Azure blob will always cost the same regardless of the Azure region in which the data is located. So each Azure region will have the different pricing tier. That's not true. When you use the general purpose V2 Azure storage account, you are only charged for the amount of the data that is stored. All the read-write operations are free. So read-write operations are not free. So in the Azure general purpose V2, you will have the hot, cool, and the archive types. So each one will be have the different price. So read and write is not free. Transferring the data between Azure storage accounts in different Azure region is free. No, so it is not true. Your company plans to deploy several million sensors that will upload data to Azure. You need to identify which Azure services must create a support plan services. So here, the data lake and the IoT hub. So IoT hub related to the sensors, and the data lake related to the big data. It stores the it's capable to store different kind of data, like structured, semi-structured, unstructured kind of a data, like IoT hub data, all these relational videos, web apps, desktop app devices. So this is data lake is for storing all kind of data, and IoT hub provides the data from millions of sensors and supports writing data to the Azure Data Lake in Gen 2. What is required to use Azure Cost Management? So Azure Cost Management, you have to have the Azure Enterprise Agreement subscription to have the cost management. If an Azure resource has a read-only lock, you can add a delete lock. Yes, you can have multiple locks on the Azure resource. Azure subscription can be associated with multiple Azure Active Directory tenants. So each subscription can have only one Active Directory. Answer is no. You can change the Azure Active Directory tenant to which the Azure subscription is associated. Yeah, you can switch the Azure Active Directory from the portal on the right side corner, top right corner. When Azure subscription expires, associated Active Directory is deleted automatically. That's not true. So even though subscription is expired, for example, you have the free subscription expired, your tenant or account still exists. Who can use the total cost ownership? So this is basically anyone who is planning to migrate from on-premise to Azure. So you can use the total cost of ownership calculator. So there are two calculators available in the Azure. So TCO calculator is available for anyone. Cache is the process of verifying users' credentials. So do not confuse with the authorization and authentication. So if you know the definition of what is doing, authentication is validating your credentials. For example, if you have a website where you enter the username and the password, that is authentication. Once you enter into the website, what access is given to the user, that's the authorization. So federation is involved multiple domains having the single sign-on implementation, that's the federation authentication. So ticketing is like you service requests or support requests you create in the Azure, that's the ticketing. So answer is authentication. You can associate a network security group to the virtual network subnet. Yes. So your NSG can be associated to the virtual network subnet or the virtual network interface card, not directly to the VNet. So this is no. This is yes. You have an Azure virtual machine named VM1. Plan to encrypt VM1 by using the Azure disk encryption. So this is Azure Key Vault. A user who is assigned the ownership role can transfer the ownership role within the Azure subscription. Yes, so you can transfer. You can convert the Azure subscription of your company from free trial to the pay-as-you-go. Yeah, that normally happens. So you start with the free trial, and then if you're a startup, you will start with the free trial and then go to the pay-as-you-go. The Azure spending limit is fixed. You cannot increase or decrease. So spending limit for the free subscription, spending limit is fixed. Spending limit is not fixed, so it can be increased or decreased. Which task can you perform by Azure Advisor? Estimates confirm their Azure subscription. Security follow the best practices. Yeah, that's correct. Confirms that the Azure subscription. Security follows the best practices. Estimating the cost, that is the billing related. The AD is not correct. Evaluate which on-premise resources can be migrated to Azure. That's not correct. Azure DevOps services allow developers to deploy, update applications to Azure using the continuous CI/CD. That's right. DevOps service includes a Git repository for the developers to store the source code. Yeah, so for the source control system, we will use the Git repository from Azure DevOps. That's correct.